They say solo sailing is the purest form of seamanship. One person, one boat, one ocean, and nobody to blame when things go wrong. But here's what people forget. The boat isn't just your transport, it's your partner. And most sailboats make terrible partners for solo ocean crossings. Because the qualities that make a boat pleasant in a marina, responsive helm, light displacement, open cockpit, big sail area, are exactly the qualities that will grind you down over 3,000 miles of open water with nobody to share the watches. A solo ocean boat needs to do something very specific. It needs to sail itself. It needs to forgive your mistakes at 3 in the morning when you haven't slept properly in 4 days. It needs to heave to and park when you need to eat, sleep, or fix something. It needs to track a course under wind vane without constant correction. And it needs to keep you alive when conditions exceed your ability to make good decisions. Because on a solo passage, that moment will come. So this list isn't about the fastest boats, the prettiest boats, or the most comfortable boats. This is about 7 sailboats that have actually proven they can carry a single human being across an ocean and bring them back whole. Built around one idea, solo ability, the boat's ability to function when the human element is at its lowest point, when you're exhausted, sick, scared, or injured. That's when the boat's design either saves you or fails you. Starting at number 7, the Westsail 32 is the boat that refuses to quit. It's slow, it's heavy, it handles like a truck in reverse, and it has carried more solo sailors across more oceans than boats twice its price. The displacement is massive for the length, 19,500 pounds on a 32-foot hull. Displacement to length ratio of 419. That puts it in the ultra-heavy category, which means this boat doesn't care about waves the way lighter boats do. It doesn't get tossed. It doesn't slam. It pushes through with raw momentum. And that momentum is what keeps a solo sailor sane on day 15 of a crossing when everything hurts. The comfort ratio is 42.9. That number means the motion is heavily damped, slow rolling, predictable pitching. You can cook, you can sleep, you can function as a human being, even in conditions that would turn a lighter boat into a rodeo. The hull is solid fiberglass, famously thick, nearly an inch at the turn of the bilge. The ballast is 7,000 pounds of lead and steel punchings encapsulated directly inside the hull cavity. No keel bolts, no flange. The keel is the hull. The rudder hangs on the trailing edge of a full keel, which is the most protected rudder configuration possible. For the solo sailor, the Westsail offers something that doesn't show up in any spec sheet. It heaves to beautifully. You back the jib, lash the helm, and the boat parks itself at about 50 degrees to the wind, drifting slowly to leeward, while creating a slick of turbulent water to windward that breaks incoming waves before they reach the hull. That's not a party trick. That's how a solo sailor sleeps in a gale. Number 6 is the Vancouver 34, a boat essentially designed from the inside out to meet the specific needs of long-distance solo sailing. Robert Harris drew the original as a 32-footer in 1979, then stretched it to 34 feet to increase waterline length and enlarge the cockpit for wheel steering. The interior layout tells the story. There's no large aft cabin. Instead, there's a secure quarter berth positioned right next to the companionway. That means the solo sailor can sleep within arm's reach of the cockpit. If the wind vane shifts, if a squall hits, if the AIS alarm goes off, you're on deck in seconds. That's not an accident. That's a design decision made by someone who understood what solo sailing actually requires. The U-shaped galley is deep and secure, with everything within reach when the boat is heeled. Every locker has a positive latch. Every surface has a fiddle rail. Displacement to length ratio is 355. Comfort ratio 36. Ballast ratio 42%. Sail area to displacement about 14.6. These are solid, heavy cruiser numbers, with a conservative sail plan that doesn't demand constant attention. The Vancouver 34 is known for its ability to sail itself once the sails are correctly balanced. Owners report leaving the helm for extended periods with just the wind vane engaged and the boat holding its line without drama. That's the definition of solo ability. Number 5 is the Pacific Seacraft 37, designed by Bill Crelock and often marketed under the name Voyage Maker. This is the boat that bridges the gap between traditional heavy displacement logic and something approaching modern performance, without sacrificing any of the qualities a solo sailor needs. The construction is overbuilt by any standard. Solid fiberglass hull, stiffened with a full-length moulded liner that's chemically bonded to the hull. That creates a structural hull within a hull that provides exceptional rigidity. Offshore rigidity matters because flex creates cracks, cracks create leaks, and leaks on a solo boat are emergencies, not inconveniences. Crelock used a split underbody, a long fin keel with a large skeg-mounted rudder. This gives better light air performance than a full keel by reducing wetted surface area, while the skeg still protects the rudder from debris strikes and provides the directional stability that wind vanes need to steer accurately. The cutter rig is another major advantage. It breaks the sail area into 3 smaller, manageable pieces. In heavy weather, a solo sailor can drop the Genoa entirely and sail under a reefed main and a small, heavy weather staysail. That keeps the centre of effort low and centred, reduces weather helm, and makes the boat much easier for a wind vane to steer without human intervention. The sail changes happen one at a time. You're never managing everything at once. Displacement to length ratio is 334. Ballast ratio 39%. Sail area to displacement about 16. Comfort ratio 35. The motion is what made Crelock famous: soft, predictable, forgiving. Sailors call it the Crelock motion. It reduces fatigue in a seaway, and fatigue isn't a comfort issue on a solo boat. Fatigue causes mistakes. Mistakes on a solo boat become emergencies. Number 4 is the Hallberg Rassy 36, which brings something to this list that most traditional blue water boats don't: a centre cockpit. And for the solo sailor, that changes everything. The centre cockpit positions you closer to the boat's centre of motion. That reduces the vertical movement you feel during pitching. On a stern cockpit boat, every wave that passes underneath lifts and drops the stern, and you feel all of it. On a centre cockpit boat, you're near the pivot point. The motion is reduced, the fatigue is reduced, and over a 3-week passage, that difference is not subtle. The cockpit is protected by a fixed windshield and an optional hard dodger. For a solo sailor who must remain on deck for extended periods in rain, spray, and cold, that protection isn't luxury. It's the difference between a functional watchkeeper and a hypothermic liability. Ballast ratio is 45%. Displacement to length ratio is 315. Sail area to displacement about 16.7. Comfort ratio 31.6. It means the boat carries its sail well, remains upright and manageable as the wind builds, and doesn't require panic reefing at the first sign of a gust. Number 3 is the Cape George 36, and it earned its place on this list in the most convincing way possible. Kirsten Neuschafer sailed one around the world solo non-stop and won the 2022 Golden Globe race. She became the first woman to win a solo round-the-world race on a Cape George 36 named Minnehaha. That's not theory, that's data. The Cape George is significantly heavier than its competitors, approximately 23,500 pounds. That's nearly 7,000 pounds more than the Rustler 36. Displacement to length ratio of 333, comfort ratio of 47.8, capsize screening formula of 1.47. Those numbers describe a freight train, a boat that's slow to accelerate but nearly impossible to stop once moving. In the massive breaking seas of the Southern Ocean, where lighter boats get tossed and knocked around by wave energy, the Cape George powers through. Where other boats have to heave to and wait, the Cape George maintains 7-knot averages and keeps making miles. And for a solo sailor, every mile you make while others are parked is a mile closer to safety. Number 2 is the Contessa 32, and it has been humiliating bigger boats for half a century. For solo sailing, it makes a case that's almost impossible to argue against. Beam is 9.5. That's narrow. Ballast ratio is 47%. That's enormous. Displacement to length ratio is 308. Capsize screening factor is 1.8. But the number that matters most is the angle of vanishing stability. 156 degrees. That means this boat has to be rolled almost completely upside down before it loses its desire to come back upright. And when it does come back, it comes back fast. For a solo sailor, that number isn't academic. It's the answer to the question that keeps you awake at night. What happens if the boat gets knocked down while I'm asleep? On a Contessa 32, the answer is the boat comes back. The narrow beam is often criticized by people who want interior volume. But for a solo sailor, narrow beam is a feature. It keeps all winches and lines within easy reach of the helm. The deep cockpit provides physical security in rough conditions, keeping the sailor low and braced. And the tiller steering gives direct, immediate feedback about what the boat is doing. You feel the balance, you feel the pressure, you feel when it's time to reef before the instruments tell you. The Contessa's 1979 Fastnet performance is legendary. In survival conditions that killed 15 people and sank 5 boats, the Contessa 32 Ascent was the only boat in her class to finish. That's the boat's resume. And number 1 is the Rustler 36. The Rustler 36 is the number 1 solo ocean crossing sailboat in the world right now. Not because it's the biggest, not because it's the fastest, not because it's the cheapest, because it has the most comprehensive proof of solo ocean performance of any production sailboat ever built. In the 2018 Golden Globe race, the top 3 finishers, Jean-Luc van den Heide, Mark Slats and Uku Ranma, all sailed Rustler 36s, solo, non-stop, around the world, through the Southern Ocean, through the worst weather on the planet. That's not one lucky result, that's dominance. And in the 2022 Golden Globe race, the Rustler 36 was again one of the most represented designs in the fleet. When people who stake their lives on a boat for 9 months of solo sailing keep choosing the same design, that tells you something no spec sheet can. The hull is solid fiberglass, thick, simple, repairable anywhere on Earth with basic materials. The underwater profile is a full-length keel with encapsulated ballast and a rudder hung on the trailing edge. That's maximum tracking stability and maximum rudder protection. Displacement is 16,850 pounds. Ballast ratio is 51%. That's the highest ballast ratio on this entire list. It means over half the boat's weight is lead-mounted as low as possible, pulling the boat upright with enormous force. Displacement to length ratio is 406. That's ultra heavy. The motion is deeply damped, predictable, comfortable in conditions that would make lighter boats violent. The Rustler heaves too beautifully. When the wind exceeds your ability to manage sail, when you need to sleep, eat, or repair something, you park the boat. The Rustler creates a slick of turbulent water to windward that breaks incoming waves before they hit the hull. The boat sits quietly at 50 degrees to the wind, drifting slowly to leeward, barely moving. You go below, you sleep, you eat, you come back up, and the boat is exactly where you expect it to be. And that's why it's number one. The West Sail for raw indestructibility and carrying capacity, the Vancouver for purpose-built solo ergonomics, the Pacific Seacraft for fatigue-reducing motion and balanced handling, the Hallberg Rassi for center cockpit protection and systems accessibility, the Cape George for Southern Ocean momentum and proven race results, the Contessa for stability geometry that refuses inversion, and the Rustler for the most complete solo ocean crossing resume in production sailing history. 7 boats, 7 different answers to the same question. Can one person cross an ocean alone and come back whole? On these boats, the answer is yes. If you've solo sailed any of these boats offshore, or if you think there's another design that deserves to be on this list, say so in the comments. That's where the real patterns show up. And if you want more straight breakdowns of what actually works when it matters, subscribe. No hype, just what holds up when you're out there alone.